Hey Computer, play About Bees podcast.
Well, welcome back, everybody. We're into our season preview for season number 2 on About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity with Ron Miksha and
Bidzina, Mosiashvili. I had a little
Bidzina. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I had a
Yeah.
little voice crack there when I said my name.
Did you? Let's try it again then. Let's make sure people can hear you. Yeah.
Bidzina Mosiashvili. But yes, season 2, and I thought we wouldn't make it to season 2, but here we are in season 2 already, in 2 months later.
You bet. You bet. We're close to 3 months. Our first episode went out in July, the end of July. It's as we're recording this today, and we're going to be releasing it almost immediately. It is towards the end of October. So we've gone August, September, and October. So we're into 3 months, but that's kind of a season, spring lasts 3 months, summer lasts 3 months, at least on the calendar. It might not,
Right.
here in Calgary, it
Yep.
seems like winter is a lot longer than 3 months. But hey, you've got your honey all collected now, don't you?
I got all the honey collected. Yes, that's right. And yesterday I wrapped them up as well.
Oh,
I got,
good.
yeah, yeah.
I
There's
think that's perfect timing for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be snowing on Monday, I heard.
Oh, okay. Well, we haven't had any snow on the ground yet here in Calgary,
Yeah,
so that's kind of unusual for our part of the world.
but it's only will be for the one day, just very briefly.
Okay.
Be a little bit of
Okay.
snow, a little flurry.
Yeah. Yeah. But it's just nice to have them wrapped. And then if it does end up being several inches of snow, you don't have to worry. Snow is just extra insulation, but you do want them insulated first if you can. I mean, you
Yeah,
just got to get out there and do that. So you did it. You did it. Congratulations. That's
and
good.
how did your beekeeping season go?
Oh, pretty well. I really appreciate your help. And you came out and took the honey off the bees and extracted them because that's something that I just can't physically do anymore. So it was really, really nice to have your help on that. And
I
we're kind of, yes, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say it's just two hives in the backyard, but you're kind of the foster parent of those hives now. So we can work together with them, but you've got a good chunk of honey off of them this year.
Yeah, it was good, very good chunk. Yeah, about 125 pounds. Whatever I could get. Anyways, a lot of it was left in the box. So if I was able to get all of it out, probably would have been more. But what I was gonna say, I found your sixth box.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
All right.
it
Well,
was
we'll worry about yeah.
it was somewhere there. But yeah, I found the sixth box, and also we're kind of in transition of this foster and parenting thing, and
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
We'll see how it goes. We'll see how it goes. I'd like you to have the bees, and I don't want to charge you for them, but right now, I feel like with my 60 years experience and your 4 years of experience, we'll wait until we're a little like I've transferred a little more of how I would run the bees, and then it's up to you after that.
Well, I have your book, Bad Beekeeping Blog, and I'm still haven't gotten around reading it. Um, I have it above my head. I'm hoping through osmosis the knowledge will
Hmm.
transfer.
Yeah. Oh, you got to put it under your pillow when you're sleeping at night. That's
Right.
what most people do at university, anyhow. Hey,
Yeah.
this is season 2, and like you say, it's a surprise that we made it through season 1, which had 12 episodes. Plus, we had a pilot kind of episode, and it encouraged people to go back and listen to those earlier episodes that have already been released, and they're available on all the platforms and wherever you're listening to this or watching it on YouTube. Then you've also got access to all of the earlier ones. Our first episode was released in late July, and that pilot episode actually was our introduction to the world. So we chatted about the things that kind of keep you and I busy and how we got into the beekeeping world. And that's out there. So I'm not going to repeat all of that, But as we kind of know, Bidzina, you're a new beekeeper with lots of enthusiasm and great new ideas. And me, I'm old and stale, but been around. So between the two of us, we're hoping that we can convey enough information about bees and beekeeping and about other types of bees and the wild bees. This kind of harkens back to the story we had on, oh, I think it was maybe in September, mid-September or so. We had Roseanne with her work in rescuing bumblebees and other bees that are kind of in a place where people are going to be plowing up. And how did she rescue them?
Well, she used a very unique method with dogs, pretty much. Bee disease sniffing dogs, or dogs that could just detect bees. And I don't think I've ever heard of this before. And yeah, this was something extremely unique, is not seen before. And these dogs were able to find bees underneath compost and snow.
That's amazing. They must
Yeah.
have pretty good noses.
Well, that just I can't even, I don't even understand how that's possible.
Hmm.
But they somehow have the intellectual capabilities to do that, the dogs.
And the nose for it. I don't have that good of a
Yeah.
nose. I could smell bees underneath. Although, when I'm driving down a highway, I often can spot rows of bees kind of hidden halfway behind a bit of trees or way at the end of a field. And people I'm riding with, they don't even notice them. So it is something you can also learn. And I guess the dogs have to be trained to be able to know what they're smelling. And that's what Roseanne's doing. So I just kind of want to repeat what you said about the disease detection, because that's the next phase of what she's doing. Honeybees have some diseases that give off a particular odor, and dogs can be trained to find and sniff for American foulbrood, for example. So,
Right.
so she's there. Go back to that earlier episode.
8.
And pardon?
It was episode 8.
Was it? Okay, episode 8. Go back to episode 8 and just follow that episode along. See
Or I'm
if
sorry,
as a
it was episode 7. Or no,
okay,
it was episode 8. I have it labeled incorrectly. Yeah, it was
okay.
episode 8.
Don't ever make that mistake ever again. Um, or we won't make it through the end of season 2. Anyhow, I'm just kidding, of course. So we had Rosanna, we had Patrick, and notice I'm not trying to say anybody's last name. No, so both have French sounding names. Patrick and Roseanne have last names that are very French sounding. Patrick being from the country of Cameroon, which is in Africa, and that was a fascinating topic where we talked about uh, what the scenery, the type of honey, the way bees are kept. There are a couple of beekeepers there with thousands of colonies of bees, commercial beekeepers in Cameroon, Africa.
Yes.
Some of the other, I think the most popular, other than our original pilot, that's had the most downloads of anything. People want to know who we are. So a lot of people have listened to that. But we've also had really, what the most popular one after that was?
Was it Tolstoy?
No, no, Tolstoy wasn't that popular. I did have one person send a note saying, I'd like to hear more stories about that kind of culture and how it all fits together. But in general, it wasn't picked up and downloaded as much. I think the word Tolstoy probably scared people who failed English class a long time ago. But
Mm,
the most popular one of all, other than the pilot, was Do Bees Feel Pain?
right, right. That was the most popular one on YouTube as well.
Yes?
Yes.
You had a lot of hits on YouTube with that, didn't you?
Um, so our original podcast video, it got 95 views, the pilot.
Yeah.
Then Can Bees Feel Pain got 88 views. And every
Okay.
other episode posted has an average of 30 to 50 views.
Oh, I don't want our listeners to hear that because they'll think we're not very successful.
But the clips Well, they have a very high retention rate. These viewers are listening to the videos, which is very good.
Yeah.
And we
What
have
do you mean
76.
by high retention? What does that mean, high retention rate?
They will listen to the videos for a
You
long.
mean all the way through to the end?
Some of them will, but a lot of them will long for a long portion of the video. They will listen to it. 10
Okay.
minutes, 15 minutes, 20 minutes in different segments, which is
Yeah.
it's very difficult to do on YouTube. But the clips that I've been posting have been getting thousands of views, tens of some of them even above 10,000, and that's
Okay.
majority of them are Daniels. So
Yeah.
I'll go.
Well, that's okay. We don't need numbers or bringing that up. I just bring that to people's attention that if they haven't gone to the YouTube channel, and how do they find the YouTube channel if they're searching?
About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity podcast.
Just type that in and YouTube
Yeah,
will pop it up. And
it
then
will
they
pop
can look
up.
at the shorts. You call it short videos?
They're called shorts. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know that much about YouTube. Occasionally will watch to see something that some of the beekeeping and just wild bees, native bees, those sorts of things. I'll watch some of them here and there. But so they just type in the search window and then they will see all your episodes that are up there.
They should be able to click an album, and there will be a podcast album. They'll see
Oh,
everything there.
I didn't know that it worked by albums. So within the album, that's where the shorts are too.
No, the shorts are separated.
Okay. Okay. But
That
they can
will,
look around and
yeah,
yeah.
they'll have to. You'll have to do a little bit of digging, and but anyway, on TikTok, it has similar amount of views and pretty much,
You
you
mean
know,
in the thousands?
in the thousands. So if you combine all of this, it's a lot of views for a brand new podcast.
Okay. I guess I can be happy with that.
Yeah.
That sounds really good. Yeah. Okay. So that was season one. Now we're into season two. And season two, first of all, this is our trailer for season two that we're talking right now. We're going to try to convince people that they should take time out of their busy day to listen or watch the podcasts or video casts as they come up. And next week, we will be releasing, that's going to be coming out, say, around the last week of October. We had a really special guest, a person whom I've known for about 5 or 6 years and worked with bees around him, helped teach some of his uh, courses and workshops. And that gentleman is Chief Lee Crowchild. So
Yeah.
Chief Crowchild, yeah, Chief Crowchild was the chief of the Tsuut'ina Nation, which borders on the city of Calgary. And he was chief a few years ago, not too long ago. And he earned the title chief, and it stays with him for life. So we can call
Right.
him chief, just as you would call the president of a different nation, President Trump or whatever, was once president. So the honorary title is president. And
Right.
Chief Crowchild got interested in bees. What do you remember from that podcast?
Well, Chief Crowchild has a bee yard on the reserve, correct?
Yes, yes, he
Yes.
does.
Yeah, and then from that they started. They created the Native Bee Council, or
Hmm.
was that it was before the Native Bee
No,
Council?
I think that all kind of grew together at about the same time.
Right. And now the Native Bee Council has become the advocate for native bees in Alberta, which honeybees are not native. So this is such an interesting dynamic that Chief Crowchild has been able to balance by still keeping bees, honeybees, and then also protecting the native pollinators at the same time. That was kind of the big highlight for me, was
Hmm.
his conversation about the Native Bee Council. and the
Yeah, and
conversation.
the
Yeah,
balance that he's striving for. And one way of achieving a balance like that is to limit the number of the honeybees that are brought in so that they're not draining too much away from the native bees. So
right.
he's very enthusiastic about he's I think one of his degrees, if I remember right, was in biology or ecology or something like that. So he knows a lot anyway. Or maybe it's a degree that you earn through the sweat of your brow. Like he's gone out and measured and counted and mapped different resources of native plants and animals on the Tsuut'ina Nation. I found that really a really good conversation, and that's coming up next week. And a little later, we talked about bumblebees in particular with one of the directors of the Alberta Native Bee Council, and his name is
Yes,
Matias Fenton.
yes. And Matthias is a very keen observer of bees, who is not a beekeeper.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right. He's a teacher, a professor at Mount Royal University, which is where we usually record our
yeah,
episodes. And he popped in for a couple of hours to discuss his work in in analyzing the effect of where you would place an empty box in the spring in order to best attract bumblebees to live in that box for the summer.
yes. And what he found is, um,
Well, why don't you let
um,
him tell us?
yeah, that's true.
No, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead. No, I
But
just
the little summary of just above the ground, a little bit, I think 10 feet was it, or 5 feet above the ground is what is the best height for bees, or for native bees, bumblebees nests.
for attracting them into your own
Yeah.
box. That's right. So
For,
normally
yes,
what you
for your
do,
own
yeah,
box. Yeah.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. Now they might nest in the ground or they might nest under a pile of snow or hay or something. Well, not usually snow because if there's snow on the ground, then the bees are in trouble. But if there's hay on the ground, they often will make their nest inside of that. But he found that if you have a box and it's the right size and you place it high enough off of the ground, you're going to increase your chances that it will get settled by bumblebees.
Yeah.
And we're really keen on having bumblebees if we're gardeners because honeybees aren't really that effective for backyard gardens.
Yeah,
Honeybees are,
that's right.
that's right. You remember the reasons for that?
Well, they go for quantity rather than quality, and they don't really and they don't go for proximity either. They won't go for a flower that's close to them. They'll go to a flower that has the most amount of crop nectar that's available.
That's right.
So they'll always go to a field
Hmm.
rather than a garden. They'll go to
That's
a
right.
garden last.
Hmm. Hmm. That's absolutely right. And a lot of people don't realize that honeybees aren't the effective pollinator for a backyard garden, but bumblebees are because bumblebees will only fly a few hundred meters where the honeybees will typically fly a few kilometers when they're gathering their nectar or pollen. So if you want to have a really good pollination, you want to do things that will make your bumblebees and other native wild bees happy. So we have an episode coming up in a couple of weeks on that. I have an old friend. Well, I don't mean to say that he's old, but he is. He's roughly my age, and Steve Clifford. He was a big commercial beekeeper in northern Saskatchewan, up near the end of agriculture, in an area where it's not unheard of to make 300 pounds of honey as an average over 1,000 colonies of bees in each year. So he had those kinds of incredible honey crops, but he just recently, in the last few years, has relocated, kind of a retirement project. He's moved out west. He's on what they call the Sunshine Coast of Canada, and there he's raising and selling queen cells because he
Yes.
was also a queen breeder in his younger years. So he's still a queen breeder. He's raising and selling queen cells. I really liked that conversation because he's such an interesting person who's had a lot of experiences in a lot of different ways.
Right. No, that was a very interesting conversation. And then again, with his experience and your experience and a little bit of mine, we were just over 125 years of beekeeping experience in a Zoom podcast.
Whoa, I hadn't thought of that. But yeah, that's actual practical beekeeping.
Yep,
Over a century of it.
that's right.
Goodness.
And in a completely different, two completely different ways of doing it. And then a
Mm-hmm.
little bit of a different way as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. We did have we that's a great episode, and that's coming up within about a month or so. We also had a visitor. What was his Herman
Yes.
Van Reem? Is
Yeah.
that correct? Herman Van Reem. Okay, yes. So
I
what
always
was
think of Van
Herman?
Halen when his name comes
Yeah,
up. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Oh, he looked a little bit like Van Halen.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hmm. So what was he here for? Like, why did we interview him?
Well, he's, I would say, at the forefront of innovation, beekeeping innovation here in Alberta and probably in Canada as well. And he's essentially trying to create well, let me kind of create an analogy, right?
Hey,
So imagine a 1969 Cobra Mustang, right?
okay.
But it's outfitted with modern sensors. It has modern sensors. It has the modern tires. It has a modern engine, modern steering wheel, power steering, backup camera, front camera, can talk to your phone. But when you look at it from the outside, it looks like a 1969 Cobra Mustang or Shelby. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly.
Cool. And well, no, that's really good. I think that's a
But
really
yeah,
good analogy.
he's making a bee home where bees will live inside of. That's a traditional bee home, but that's outfitted with all sorts of technology and sensors that will control the heat, humidity, and essentially talk to your phone in anywhere you are. It will be portable. It will have solar panels and battery powered. And yeah, I don't know. It's called the Bee Cube.
The Bee Cube.
Yeah,
Right. Right. Oh, that's a great one. That's one that I think our listeners are really going to enjoy.
yeah,
That's a great topic. And the last one that we have pre-recorded and it's in the queue and is going to be released in a little over a month stars Daniel Miksha, and he is a philosophy and neuroscience major at the at McGill University in Quebec
yes,
and in Montreal, Quebec. And Daniel came in. His topic of his own choice and his own interest was to talk to us about Plato.
yeah.
So you remember something about Plato?
I remember a lot. I remember I talked a lot about Plato that was incorrect, but I also remember that uh, Plato is a student of Aristotle.
Socrates.
Socrates, I'm sorry. And then
Yep.
Socrates is a student of Aristotle.
No, no, no. Aristotle was a student of Plato. So it went
Oh my,
Socrates, Plato. No, you got it in the right order, just backwards.
yeah. So Socrates, Plato, Aristotle, and
Yes,
Alexander the Great was a dropout student of Aristotle.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right. I wonder what the world would have been like if he, Alexander the Great, had decided to be a philosopher instead of going into the military and being a soldier. I wonder what it would have been
Probably it would
like.
probably we'd have the early versions of communism
Oh,
instead.
no, I hope not. But I guess the Spartans themselves were a lot like communists in the way they ran their society, but the
Yeah.
Athenians weren't. They were pretty free-spirited folks that, you know, sink or swim kind of people. Anyhow, that
Right, but I
is an
was
interesting one. Plato had a little bit to say about the bee colony and particularly about drones.
Yeah,
So that's basically why Daniel chose that we would discuss the bees from the perspective of 2,500 years ago. Wasn't it amazing how much people knew about bees and how much they didn't know back in
that's
those
right.
days?
Yeah, so Plato was pretty much puzzled by drones. He thought they were useless. They were pretty much a kind of a I don't I, I don't I don't want to put words in his mouth, but almost a kind of a parasite on society on the beehive,
I
where
think
they
he'd agree with you. That's
right.
kind of the way he put it.
Yeah, and exactly, and so which is funny because the drones we all know have serve a purpose, a very unique purpose, and that is to mate and pass on the genetic diversity of the beehive, and so inbreeding doesn't occur between the sisters. And so at the time, he thought they were useless. They were pretty much parasites, and he said, in a perfect society, we would not have any drones. So just like in a beehive, how they kick their drones out, we should also do the same to the useless or the parasites in our society.
Mhm.
Just kind
That's
of,
what he said.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's what he said. Yeah,
Hmm.
just quoting what Plato said. No,
Just quoting what Plato said. And he also had a series of types of government that
yes,
was also very interesting with, I think it was start off with an aristocracy, which was like the rule of the very well educated, superior folks who ran a government. And then there was something called a timocracy, which is when the military, so it's a military dictatorship, basically, is democracy. And don't know if I'm going to remember the next level,
it was
but
oligarchy. It was a
yeah, you're
form of
right.
oligarchy or something like that.
That's right. Oligarchy is rule of the wealthy. So the
Right,
people who have the most money, the most resources, take control of the government.
right,
And that Plato had a really interesting story to tell us that Daniel repeated for us. And that was that if you were on a boat and you had to choose somebody to guide the boat, somebody to be the captain, would you necessarily want that to be the wealthiest person, the person who knew how to scheme and collect money and maybe was really good at business? Or would you want it to be the guy with the calluses on his hand that had been out to sea once before and knew a bit about running a ship? And that's the problem with the oligarchy,
right,
according to Plato, is not the right people are in charge. Plato thought the aristocracy was the best because he claimed the best people would be in charge. Those would be the people who are the best educated for the job of running a government. And then after the oligarchy, then was democracy,
right,
and he saw that as the second worst of all forms of government because then the riffraff, the ordinary common folks, get to be in charge. I don't know. I kind of think that if you have your ordinary common folks well educated, then any of them could probably do just as well, or maybe even better than those oligarchs. So I don't know why he would put them below the oligarchy, but then finally, after a democracy's been in power for a while, the poor folks in the democracy, and this is what Plato really worried about, is that those folks who were part of the democracy will eventually vote in a tyrant because they'll be persuaded of, maybe their lives aren't going so well, or they aren't making a lot of money and they think they should be doing better. And somebody will come along and say, I can make it all better for you. Just give me the power to do it. So, according to Plato, we would go from a democracy into a tyranny. And
right.
I don't know if there are any examples of that around the world in the past, but I guess there probably are. So, anyhow, that was our episode on Plato and the drone bees, which will be coming out little later on. We also recorded just the two of us without any special guests. We recorded an episode on granulation. What makes honey
Yeah.
granulate? And what do you do about it? Like, how can you keep honey from granulating? We're particularly concerned here in the Alberta area with honey that will crystallize in the hive before we have a chance to extract it. Now, you mentioned to us that you had some boxes that had an awful lot of honey left in them. So, what would you do differently when you were extracting? Not all the honey came out, and I assume that some of that's granulated by now. So, how
Yeah.
did what went wrong? I guess is the question. What would you do differently?
Well, what went wrong was just my extractor was not strong enough, and it was just not be able to pull off the weight. But I also, another issue that was having was when I was putting in the frames. I haven't worked with eight medium frames this year. It was my first year working with medium frames, and when I would put in the frames, sometimes I would mess up the weight distribution, and the extractor would spin all odd, and some of the frames would not get all the honey out. But then when I would distribute the weight properly, would get everything out. So that was a big issue, and just yeah, it was just inefficiencies of the process and just not been able to get it all out with using my extractor.
Well, that's a learning experience. And I would add to it one thing that you've mentioned to me was you would like to be extracting when it's warmer.
Yes,
When you have cold honey, it just doesn't like to leave the frame. So,
it does
um,
not.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
was
So,
keeping it in my car to heat it up
mm-hmm,
with
mm-hmm. Now,
using this
this
kind of a solar.
a lot of extra work that you
Yeah,
were doing. Yep,
yeah,
yep. Anyway, next year will be better. Things will be better.
it
And
will.
another ep yeah, it will. And another episode that I want to mention is that you and I read some mail that came into the About Bees
Yeah,
Culture and Curiosity podcast, video cast. And some of those questions were really pretty funny,
they were.
very
Yes,
interesting. They were very interesting. So those came in from various sources writing to you and I, and we would really encourage people to follow up and send us some more. What's on your mind? What kind of episodes would you like to be hearing? And what else can we do? And also, if you have any particular questions about where honey comes from, or how much honey do people eat, or how can I make my bees make more honey, or
yeah,
how much trouble do my honeybees cause the native bees in my backyard? We could talk about those things.
yeah. No,
And we might in our season number 2. Yeah.
questions are always welcome. And the sillier the better.
The silly. Well, silly, it becomes memorable.
Yeah.
People will remember that. And yeah, absolutely. Well, that's about all the time we have for this introductory trailer pre-season 2 introduction. It's going to be live tomorrow. So we're recording this on Sunday, putting it out Monday morning. At what time do you usually post your video
At
cast on
8
YouTube?
a.m. Mountain Standard Time.
8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. So Mountain Time for Calgary is the same time zone as, let's say, Denver, Colorado, for
Yeah,
people listening in the United States.
yeah,
So if you're on the East Coast, you'll have to wait until 10 in the morning to be able to hear the new release. But that's a good time. That's coffee time. So, I think that's perfect.
maybe
Anyway,
that was intentional.
maybe it was, maybe it wasn't,
But
but
but the
yeah.
West Coast get at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m., I guess.
7 a.m. Yes. Yeah. So they're still lying in bed and they can, put their iPhone on, put their,
Yeah, the idea is like you kind of hit those three time zones and generally in the
mm-hmm,
same time.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Perfect. Perfect. Won't say much for the people out there in Alaska, Hawaii, or maybe down under in Australia, but hey, we're there anytime. So you can listen to the old episodes, you can listen to it a day late. We're there. All right. Thanks everybody for listening. And Bidzina, you want to take us home?
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And don't forget to check out all the episodes. Like, share, subscribe, comment, all the silly questions you like. and have a wonderful rest of your month.
Hey, thanks everyone. Bye bye.
Thank you.